The hum of old mining machines echoed through the dusty tunnels of Caris 9, a lonely moon spinning around a dull orange planet. For most people, it was a miserable place, cold, forgotten, and too far from the comfort of the inner systems. But for Daniel Rain, it was peace. Once, he had worn the blue and silver uniform of the Starfleet, the defense arm of humanity's expansion into the galaxy. He had commanded ships, made impossible calls, and led people through battles that still haunted him. But those days were long gone now. He had resigned quietly and completely, leaving behind the endless stars for the quiet hum of drills and machines. Daniel worked as a maintenance engineer at a cargo outpost. Every morning he would check the ore loaders, clean the plasma coils, and fix what the miners broke. He lived in a small cabin made of recycled hull metal, ate synthetic noodles, and kept to himself. The locals knew him as the quiet mechanic. None of them had ever seen him raise his voice. None of them knew what he had done or who he used to be. The only sign of his past was an old insignia badge he kept in a small box under his bed. He never wore it, never showed it. Some nights he would take it out, look at the worn metal, and then close the box again before the memories could pull him under. That was his life. Simple, silent, safe until the day the sky burned gold. The first sign was the light. A strange glow spread across the horizon, brighter than any sunrise. The miners came out of their stations, shielding their eyes. Then came the sound, a deep, slow rumble that shook the ground. Daniel stepped out of his workshop, squinting upward. A ship was descending through the thin atmosphere, its hull shining like a cut diamond. It wasn't a cargo freighter or a fleet vessel. It was something else, sleek, curved, and impossibly graceful. Its engines left trails of shimmering blue mist behind it. Someone near him whispered, "Is that Veyron design?" Daniel's chest tightened. He knew that name. The Veyron Empire, the most powerful alien nation in the Outer Rim. Their ships were rare in human space, and when they appeared, it usually meant trouble or diplomacy of the highest order. The massive vessel slowed above the colony, releasing a wave of gentle pressure that knocked dust off the buildings. Its landing struts unfolded like silver petals, touching the ground with elegance. As the main ramp lowered, the crowd fell silent. Out came a group of royal guards, tall, silver-skinned beings wearing armor that shimmered like liquid glass. Their eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning everything around them with a calm, deadly focus. The miners froze, unsure if they should bow or run. Then she appeared, the Queen of Vera. Her name was Alira, and her presence alone silenced the wind. She walked with quiet grace, her long robe flowing like liquid light behind her. Her skin was pale gold, her eyes deep blue like the heart of a nebula. A faint crown of living light shimmered around her head. Every step she took made the world seem to pause. Even the guards looked smaller beside her. No one on Caris 9 had ever seen royalty, much less alien royalty. The miners bowed awkwardly, some falling to one knee out of instinct. Daniel didn't move. He simply watched, heart thudding, unsure what this meant. One of the guards announced in a clear, melodic voice, "By decree of Her Radiant Majesty, Queen Alira of the Veyron Empire, this colony is honored by her presence. She seeks an audience with one among you." The queen raised her hand gently, stopping the guard. Her voice was calm and melodic, carrying across the dusty air. "Where is the human named Daniel Rain?" A shocked silence followed. Daniel froze. His hands went still, grease still staining his palms from the work he had been doing minutes earlier. His name, spoken in a tone like music, echoed in his ears. Everyone turned to look at him. He sighed quietly, wiped his hands on his work suit, and stepped forward. "That would be me," he said. The queen's eyes softened slightly as she looked at him. "Then it is true," she murmured. "You live among miners and machines." Daniel frowned. "That's right. What does the Queen of Vera want with a retired engineer?" Her lips curved into a small, unreadable smile. "You are not just an engineer, Daniel Rain. You are the man who saved my fleet during the Orion siege, the human who taught our admirals how to fight when we had forgotten courage." He looked away. "That was years ago. I'm not that man anymore." Alira tilted her head slightly, studying him. "And yet you still fix what is broken." Her words hit something inside him. Still, Daniel shook his head. "Whatever you came for, I can't help you. I resigned from Starfleet a long time ago." The queen took a slow step forward. The light around her flickered gently. brushing the air like warmth. The stars do not care for our resignations, Daniel. They break whether we wish to see them or not. He didn't want to hear this. Not again. Not after everything that had happened. The wars, the losses, the people he couldn't save. He had left for a reason. He had promised himself never to be pulled back into the fire. But then she said something that made his breath stop. The Voidborn Dominion has returned. The name was like a shadow from his past. The Voidborn weren't just an enemy. They were monsters made of darkness and hunger. Their ships devoured energy. Their weapons left nothing but silence. He had fought them once, and he had seen what they could do. He had also seen how close humanity and Vera had come to losing everything. Daniel stared at her, eyes narrowing. I thought they were gone. The treaty. Broken, Alira said quietly. 3 systems have already fallen. Our fleets are divided. Our scientists are missing. We need someone who understands them. Someone who doesn't fear impossible odds. Someone like me, he finished bitterly. She nodded. Yes. He turned away, looking at the horizon. The sky above Karis 9 was dull and empty, peaceful. That was the life he had chosen. He didn't want to trade it for war, not again. I'm sorry, Your Majesty, he said softly. I don't belong in the stars anymore. There was a long silence. Then, to his surprise, the Queen stepped closer. She didn't sound royal anymore, just tired. You think I want this war? She asked quietly. I want peace as much as you do. But peace dies when no one is willing to defend it. Daniel looked at her then, really looked at her. For the first time, he saw not a ruler, but a person carrying the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders. And she was asking him, not as a soldier, but as a human, to help her bear it. He wanted to say no. He almost did. But something inside him, the part that still cared, still remembered the stars, wouldn't let him. He sighed. If I go with you, what happens then? Alira's expression softened. Then you see for yourself why the universe needs you again. The next morning, the ship lifted off. Daniel stood on the ramp, looking down at the colony shrinking below. The miners waved silently, unsure if he would ever return. The hum of the engines filled the air as the Solara Prime rose into the clouds. For the first time in years, Daniel Rain was leaving the ground and heading back into the unknown. As the stars stretched into lines of light, Alira turned to him and said with a small, knowing smile, Welcome back to the stars, Daniel Rain. You may have resigned from Starfleet, but destiny never accepted your resignation. Daniel looked at her, half amused, half uneasy. Let's just hope destiny knows what it's doing. Outside, the void awaited, vast, silent, and full of unfinished stories. And somewhere in that endless darkness, the first spark of something greater, war, fate, or perhaps something far more human had already begun. The Solara Prime was unlike any ship Daniel Rain had ever seen. It wasn't built, it was grown. The walls shimmered like living crystal, and the corridors glowed with a soft golden light that pulsed gently, as if the ship itself had a heartbeat. Every surface felt warm, alive and humming with energy. Daniel followed a royal guard through curved hallways, past soldiers, attendants, and strange devices that looked more like art than machines. His boots echoed softly on the polished floor. Everything here was elegant, calm, and precise, completely opposite of the cold steel ships of Starfleet. The guard stopped before a tall door made of shifting light. It opened silently. Inside was a wide chamber filled with stars projected around the ceiling, like standing in the middle of space itself. At the center stood Queen Alira, gazing at the star map in front of her. She turned as he entered. I hope the quarters were comfortable. Daniel gave a small shrug. Too comfortable. Makes me nervous, the Queen smiled faintly. Humans never trust beauty when it's quiet. He stepped closer, looking at the projection. Dozens of systems glowed red, their lights dimming one by one. These are the attacked worlds? Alira nodded. The Voidborn move faster than we expected. They drain the light from suns and feed on the energy. Entire colonies vanish in hours, Daniel frowned. And your admirals? What are they doing? They argue, she said quietly. Half wish to surrender. The others want to destroy everything to stop the Dominion. Both choices lead to ruin. He studied her for a moment. There was exhaustion in her eyes, the kind that came from caring too much for too long. And you want me to fix that? I want you to show them what courage looks like again, Alira said. You once commanded ships that shouldn't have survived. You made people believe in impossible odds. That is something no council can teach. Daniel looked away. I did what I had to do back then. I'm not a commander anymore. She stepped closer. But you are still human. And that is enough. He sighed softly. You make it sound simple. It isn't, she admitted. Which is why I need you. Later, Daniel walked through the observation deck. Beyond the transparent walls, the stars shone brighter than he remembered. Ships of the Royal Fleet drifted around the Solara Prime like silver birds, their wings catching light from nearby nebulae. It was beautiful. Too beautiful for a galaxy at war. He leaned on the railing, thinking of the miners on Karis 9, the quiet days, the peace he had lost. He wasn't sure if he could ever return to that life now. Lost in thought, Captain? He turned. Alira stood beside him, her robe catching the faint starlight. She had dismissed her guards, something unusual for a ruler surrounded by danger. I'm not a captain anymore, he said softly. Perhaps, she replied, but your eyes still carry the stars. Daniel chuckled lightly. You talk like a poet. I learned from humans, she said with a smile. Your words shape emotions in ways we cannot. That is why your kind changed the galaxy without meaning to. There was silence for a moment, peaceful but strange. Then Alira's tone grew serious again. I have called the council for an emergency session tomorrow. I want you there. Me? He asked, surprised. I'm not even part of your empire. Exactly, she said. That is why they might listen to you. The next day, the Royal Council chamber glittered with light. Hundreds of noble representatives filled the seats. Tall, elegant beings with shimmering skin tones of gold, silver, and blue. Their eyes glowed faintly and their expressions were cold and sharp. At the center of the chamber stood Alira's throne, high and radiant. Daniel stood beside it, feeling completely out of place. He could feel the stares, hundreds of them. The Queen raised her hand. My council, she began. You know of the human standing beside me. This is Daniel Rain, once of Starfleet, hero of Orion, and savior of our ships when all seemed lost. A ripple of voices moved through the chamber. Some respectful, others doubtful. One elder stood, his tone cold. Majesty, why do you bring an outsider into this sacred hall? His kind are unpredictable. They lack our discipline. Another nodded. He may have helped us once, but humans are short-lived. How can we trust him with the fate of the stars? Daniel stayed silent. He had faced worse than words. Alira's gaze grew sharp. Because when our ships burned, he did not abandon us. When we faltered, he stood firm. He earned our trust through action, not blood. The murmurs continued. Then let him prove it, someone shouted. Alira raised her hand again. He will. But he will need authority to do so. Daniel frowned slightly, uncertain where this was going. The Queen's eyes met his, and there was a hint of something deeper in her calm expression. Therefore, she declared, I will bind his fate to mine. To secure our unity before the stars, I declare him my royal consort, my chosen mate until peace returns. The chamber erupted. Gasps, shouts, disbelief. Daniel blinked, stunned. Wait, what? The Queen turned toward him, her voice calm but firm. Our alliance is fracturing. The only way to silence the Council's fighting is to show them that I trust humanity completely. A symbolic union between our species may hold the Empire together. Daniel shook his head. Alira, that's not necessary. I came here to help, not to... She interrupted softly. You came here because you care, and that is exactly what they need to see. The council chamber filled with voices again, some angry, some shocked. One noble shouted, a human cannot share the crown. Alira turned her gaze on him, her calm voice carrying the weight of command. Then perhaps the crown means less than I thought. The chamber fell silent. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the world tilt around him. He wanted to argue, to tell her she was making a mistake. But when he met her eyes, he saw no manipulation, only determination. After the council dispersed, Daniel found himself pacing in the Queen's private garden. The air was full of glowing petals drifting from tall blue trees. The sky above shimmered with twin moons. Alira entered quietly, her steps soft against the silver grass. Daniel turned toward her. You didn't have to do that. You could have united them another way. She smiled faintly. There was no other way. They listen to fear, not reason. But they respect strength and love they cannot control. He stared at her. Love, this isn't... I know, she said quickly. It is only a title, a promise for the sake of peace. I do not expect your heart to follow politics. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. Still, the galaxy now thinks the Queen of Vera is marrying a human mechanic. That's quite a headline. Her laughter was soft, like starlight touching water. Let them talk. Their words will not win this war. He couldn't help but smile back. You're a strange ruler. And you're a strange human, she replied gently. They stood in silence for a while, the glow of the garden wrapping them in soft light. Finally, Daniel asked, So what happens now? Alira looked toward the stars. Now we prepare. The Voidborn will strike again soon, and when they do, we will show them that humanity and Vera stand together. Daniel nodded slowly. Then let's get to work. Over the next few weeks, the royal shipyard came alive with activity. Daniel walked among alien engineers, sharing old human tactics, redesigning ships with mixed technology. He taught them how to build flexible defenses, how to think unpredictably. The Verans were amazed by his simplicity, by how humans made brilliance from scraps and instinct. Even the royal soldiers began to respect him. They called him the human strategist, but not everyone was happy. Whispers spread through the palace, rumors that the queen had fallen under human influence. Some called it betrayal. Some called it love. Daniel ignored them. He didn't care what they thought. He had a war to prepare for. One night, as he looked out over the glowing city of Vera Prime, Alira joined him again. They are beginning to believe, she said quietly. Your presence gives them hope. Daniel smiled faintly. Hope's a dangerous thing. It makes people expect miracles. Then perhaps it is time for one, she said. He looked at her, seeing the faint light of the stars in her eyes. You really think this will work? Alira turned toward the horizon. It has to. Outside, the stars flickered as if answering her words. Daniel didn't know it yet, but the Queen's bold act had changed the galaxy's balance. Across light years, enemies began to move faster, and allies began to choose sides. And somewhere beyond the rim of known space, the Voidborn Dominion awakened fully, its dark ships gathering like a storm. The war for the stars had begun again. The sound of alarms echoed through the halls of Solara Prime. Crimson lights flashed across the ceilings as officers rushed between command stations. Outside, through the viewing panels, the stars glimmered, but beyond them, something dark was moving. The Voidborn Dominion had finally arrived. Daniel Rain stood at the command deck beside Queen Alira, staring at the incoming data. The screens showed strange ships, long black structures that looked like they were carved from shadow itself. Their engines didn't glow. They consumed light instead. Wherever they passed, stars dimmed and power readings dropped to zero. Alira's voice was calm but cold. They move faster than we expected. Daniel nodded grimly. They always do. They don't fight like we do, they feed. Every minute we hesitate, they grow stronger. The bridge fell silent. Everyone waited for his next words. The human they once doubted was now their hope. Daniel took a deep breath. All right, listen carefully. Split the fleet into 3 groups. The Dominion will come straight for the energy fields. We'll use that against them. Group 1 holds position near the outer moon. Group 2, stay cloaked near the debris ring. Group 3, follow me. We'll draw them in close before we strike. The Veran officers looked uncertain. Their traditions favored perfect formations, not chaos. But Alira spoke firmly. Do as he says. Her voice carried command. The officers obeyed immediately. Within minutes, the royal fleet spread out like a silver storm, vanishing among the stars. Daniel watched the tactical map, his eyes scanning every movement. The Dominion ships appeared like black stains on the screen, smooth, silent, and terrifyingly fast. They were unlike anything human or Veran. He remembered fighting them years ago, and how many had been lost before they learned even one of the enemy's weaknesses. He turned to Alira. Your ships rely too much on crystal energy. The Voidborn feed on it. We'll have to use kinetic weapons, missiles, projectiles, anything that doesn't glow. The Queen nodded. I will order the engineers to prepare human-designed launchers. Daniel gave a small grin. Now we're thinking like survivors. The battle began quietly, too quietly. From the darkness beyond the outer ring, the first Dominion ship appeared. It looked like a fragment of night given shape. Its hull shimmered faintly, not reflecting light but absorbing it. Then a beam of pale energy burst from its front, tearing through one of the Veran cruisers like paper. Gasps filled the command deck. "Shields are gone," shouted a technician. "Energy drain across all decks." Daniel didn't panic. His voice was sharp and steady. "Group 2 now. Launch decoys." Hidden among the asteroids, Group 2 ships released hundreds of small drones, each broadcasting false power signals. The void-born ships turned toward the news sources instantly, like predators chasing scent trails. "Good," Daniel murmured. "Let's see how you like chasing ghosts." The fleet opened fire. Missiles streaked across the void, silent flashes of light slamming into the Dominion vessels. Several cracked apart, bursting in dark mist. For a moment it seemed to work. The crew cheered, then the darkness moved. A second wave of Dominion ships emerged from the void, twice as many as before. Their weapons pulsed in rhythm, draining the shields of every nearby ship. The lights in the command deck flickered. "Power dropping," someone shouted. Daniel slammed his fist on the console. "All units fall back to the shadow side of the moon. Use it as cover." The fleet pulled back, hiding behind the moon's rocky surface. The Dominion ships followed, but that was exactly what Daniel wanted. He looked at Alira. "We're going to need the star cannon." She hesitated. "That weapon hasn't been fired in centuries. It could destroy the moon itself." He gave her a steady look. "Better the moon than your empire." For a long second, their eyes met. Then Alira nodded. "Activate the cannon." Deep inside the Solara Prime, ancient machinery began to awaken. The ship trembled as glowing conduits filled with power. A deep hum grew louder and louder until the deck vibrated beneath their feet. Daniel pointed at the tactical map. "Wait for my signal. We need them closer." The Dominion ships came fast. Their black hulls reflected nothing, their movement like smoke twisting through water. As they neared the moon, Daniel raised his hand. Now, a beam of pure golden energy burst from the moon's surface, cutting across the darkness. It struck the lead Dominion vessel dead center, tearing through its hull. The entire ship shattered into dust, and the shockwave destroyed 3 more behind it. Cheers erupted across the bridge. But Daniel didn't celebrate. "Don't stop firing," he ordered. "Keep the energy pulsed in short bursts. They can adapt if we stay constant." The Queen relayed the command, and the cannon continued to fire in rhythmic blasts, each one lighting up the void like a heartbeat. The enemy ships began to scatter. Daniel smiled grimly. "They're retreating. They don't like unpredictability." When the battle ended, the moon's surface was cracked, glowing from the heat of the cannon. Half the Veyron fleet had survived, battered but alive. For now, they had won. In the aftermath, Daniel walked the damaged halls of the Solara Prime. Soldiers nodded to him with quiet respect. They no longer saw him as an outsider. He had become their commander in all but name. In the infirmary, Alira stood beside wounded soldiers, speaking softly to each one. When she saw Daniel, she smiled faintly. "You look tired," she said. "I could say the same for you," he replied. "Queens aren't supposed to visit sick bays, are they?" "They are if they want to understand what they're fighting for," she said. Daniel paused, watching her as she placed a hand on a soldier's shoulder. There was kindness in her eyes, something rare among rulers he had known. "You're not what I expected," he said quietly. She looked at him curiously. "And what did you expect? Someone cold? Someone who gives orders from a throne?" Alira smiled gently. "I tried that once. It didn't work." Later that night, Daniel found her on the upper balcony of the ship. The stars were quiet again, though a faint haze marked where the battle had taken place. "You led them well," she said softly. "They followed because they believed in you," he answered. She shook her head. "No, they followed because you showed them how." Daniel leaned on the railing. "We bought time. But they'll be back." "Yes," Alira said. "And the next attack will be stronger." He looked at her. "Then we'll have to be smarter." Her eyes softened. "You speak like a king already." He laughed lightly. "I'm just an engineer who knows how to survive." They stood in silence for a while, watching the distant glow of dying stars. Then Alira spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "When I told the council you were my consort, I did it to protect my empire. But now, it feels different." Daniel turned to her, uncertain what to say. There was a sincerity in her tone that caught him off guard. "I see the way my people look at you," she continued. "They see hope, and I see the same." He looked away, his voice soft. "Hope can be dangerous." "Perhaps," she said, "but without it we have nothing." The next morning, messages flooded in from across the Empire. Worlds that had once doubted the Queen now pledged loyalty again. They called Daniel the Human Flame, a symbol of courage that refused to die. But not everyone was pleased. In the hidden corners of the palace, whispers of conspiracy began to grow. Some nobles feared that a human's influence over the Queen would end their ancient traditions. Others saw an opportunity to reclaim power. Unaware of the growing danger, Daniel focused on the next battle plan. He studied maps, adjusted defenses, and worked side by side with Alira. As they stood before a large holographic map of the galaxy, Daniel traced a route with his finger. If the Voidborn are draining systems, they'll need a central source. Something big, maybe a star core generator. Alira frowned. You think they're harvesting light? Yes, he said. And if we can find that generator, we can stop them for good. The Queen nodded slowly. Then that will be our next mission. Before she left the room, Alira paused at the doorway. Daniel, she said softly, you once told me you resigned from Starfleet because you were tired of fighting. Do you regret returning? He looked at her and smiled faintly. No, because this time I'm not fighting for orders. I'm fighting for something that matters. Alira held his gaze for a moment, then nodded. Then may the stars guide us, Daniel Rain. As the door closed behind her, Daniel looked out at the endless stars beyond the glass. He could still feel the hum of battle in his veins, the thrill of survival, and something else, something new. For the first time in years, he wasn't running from the past. He was walking toward the future, and somewhere out there in the silent void, the darkness was watching and preparing to strike again. Weeks had passed since the first encounter with the Voidborn Dominion, and the galaxy still trembled with uncertainty. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. On Vera Prime, the royal palace hummed with a tense energy. Daniel Rain had taken his place as both advisor and strategist, though his title as the Queen's human consort made him a target of whispers and suspicion. Some council members admired his brilliance, while others seethed in secret. His presence had upset the balance of tradition, and many nobles feared a human holding influence over the Empire. Daniel, however, did not focus on their murmurs. He focused on preparing for the Dominion's next move. One morning, as he walked through the palace gardens, a shadow followed him. He turned to see Commander Leora, one of Alira's most trusted officers, approaching quickly. Daniel, she said in a hushed tone, the Council is plotting against you. He raised an eyebrow. Plotting? I expected whispers, but plotting sounds dangerous, she nodded gravely. They question your authority. Some even claim you are the cause of the Dominion's return, that a human has no place here. You must be careful. Daniel clenched his fists. I didn't ask for power. I only want to stop the Dominion. Leora looked at him with respect. I know, but in this palace, even peace can be a battlefield. Daniel took a deep breath. Then I'll fight on two fronts, against the Dominion and those who would weaken the Queen from within. Later, in the throne room, Alira convened the council. Hundreds of voices filled the chamber, each speaking over the other. We cannot allow a human to command our fleet, one noble shouted. It dishonors the crown. Another added, the Dominion grows stronger. The Queen must lead, not a transient. Alira's eyes narrowed. Her calm voice cut through the chaos. Silence! The room fell still. She continued, Daniel Rain has saved our fleet. He has guided us through the darkness. His species may be human, but his courage is more than any councilman's. I will not let tradition blind us to survival. Whispers filled the room again, but this time many voices were quieter, unsure of how to argue against the Queen's resolve. Then Alira dropped the final announcement. If any wish to oppose him, they will have to oppose me as well. I stand with him. The chamber erupted in astonishment. Some gasped. Some cheered. Daniel's face remained neutral, but inside a small spark of hope ignited. The Queen had chosen him, not just for strategy, but for trust. The next mission required both courage and precision. Intelligence had revealed that the Dominion's main energy generator, a massive star core siphon, was hidden in a dark nebula near the Sarin Belt, destroying. It would cripple the Dominion's ability to drain stars, but reaching it was perilous. Daniel and Alira prepared a specialized strike team. The fleet would provide cover, but the core's defenses were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Are you sure about this? Alira asked as they boarded the mission vessel, Daniel gave a faint smile. We have no other choice. If we fail, the Dominion will consume countless systems. We succeed and we may finally have peace, she nodded. Then let's go together. As they entered the nebula, sensors flickered under the dense clouds of gas. The stars were dimmed, the shadows thick. Daniel piloted their hybrid human-Varan ship with skill, weaving between deadly currents of energy and debris. Suddenly, a massive Dominion scout appeared, a shadowy shape that dwarfed their vessel. Its dark tendrils lashed out, disabling engines on smaller ships in the fleet. Daniel's mind raced. Evasive maneuvers! Use the nebula for cover! Alira's hands flew across the controls. Target their weak points, I trust your judgment. The battle was fierce. Every strike had to be precise, every move calculated. But Daniel's experience in Starfleet proved invaluable. He anticipated the Dominion's attacks, outmaneuvered their scouts, and kept the Queen's ship safe. After what felt like hours, the enemy retreated into the darkness, giving them a narrow path to the core. When they arrived at the star core siphon, it was worse than they had imagined. Massive energy tendrils reached out like living creatures feeding on nearby asteroids. Its hum resonated through the ship, threatening to destabilize every system. Daniel's eyes narrowed. We'll need to disable the main generator manually. Automation won't survive its energy field. Alira placed a hand on his shoulder. Then we do it together. We succeed or we fail together, he nodded. Together they ventured into the core chamber. Sparks of energy danced around them. The air crackled with power. Daniel moved with precision, overriding safety locks, redirecting conduits, and preparing the charges needed to destroy the siphon. Alira assisted, coordinating shields and stabilizing the surrounding energy. It was dangerous, exhausting, and terrifying. But together they worked seamlessly. Human ingenuity and alien technology united. Finally, Daniel set the last charge. It's ready. We need to retreat now. The Queen nodded and they raced to the ship as the core began to destabilize. A massive explosion of light and energy followed. The nebula shimmered, and the Dominion siphon was gone. The fleet cheered from a distance. The mission had succeeded. Back on Vera Prime, the news of the victory spread quickly. Daniel was hailed as a hero across the Empire. Even the most skeptical nobles began to respect him. Yet danger remained. The council was quiet, but he knew their resentment hadn't vanished. Some whispered that a human wielding such influence over the Queen could never last. One evening, Daniel found Alira in the palace garden, gazing at the stars. You were amazing today, she said quietly. Daniel shook his head. It wasn't just me. It was the fleet. And you were fearless, she smiled faintly. Fearless because you were with me. I trusted you. His chest tightened. Trust. That word carried weight heavier than any title, heavier than any command. He looked down at his hands. I never expected this. Recognition. Or this trust. Alira reached out, placing her hand gently on his. You earned it. Not because of titles or bloodlines, but because of who you are. A human who refuses to give up. For a moment they stood together in silence, the soft glow of the twin moons surrounding them. Daniel realized then that the bond between them had grown beyond politics. It wasn't just duty, it was respect, understanding, and perhaps something deeper. But their peace was fragile. Messages arrived from distant worlds. Systems under Dominion influence still flickered with distress signals. The Queen's enemies in the council began to move, quietly plotting against Daniel's influence. One night, a secret attack nearly struck the Queen in her chambers. Daniel was there, shielding her just in time. The alarm blared through the palace as traitors among the council were revealed. Alira, furious, turned to the remaining loyal nobles. If you cannot stand with us, step aside. We will remove those who endanger the Empire. The council, shaken and fearful, nodded silently. Daniel's position was stronger than ever, not because of titles, but because he had proven his loyalty with action. When the threat passed, Alira placed a hand on his shoulder. You saved me, she said softly. He shook his head. We saved each other. The moment lingered, charged with unspoken understanding. The Queen's respect had grown into something more profound, a recognition of courage and companionship that transcended politics. Over the following weeks, Daniel and Alira worked to strengthen the Empire. Training programs were set up, Fleets were reorganized and trust between humans and Vayrans grew. Whispers of rebellion continued, but Daniel faced them with calm resolve. He had learned that leadership wasn't about titles. It was about courage, ingenuity, and the ability to inspire. The Queen, always beside him, acknowledged his efforts not just publicly, but privately. She began to lean on him not only for strategy but for counsel, for insight, and for guidance. One night, as they stood on the balcony overlooking the city, Alira spoke quietly. "The galaxy will remember today, Daniel Rain, not because of crowns or power, or titles, but because of humans like you." He looked out at the glowing city below, at the ships preparing for patrol, at the stars beyond. "I never wanted a throne," he said softly. "I only wanted to survive, but now, I think I understand why we fight." Alira nodded, her eyes reflecting the starlight. "We fight not for ourselves, but for everyone who cannot fight." Daniel smiled faintly. "Then I'll keep fighting with you." For the first time, he allowed himself to hope. Hope for peace, hope for understanding, and hope for a future where humans and Vayrans could stand together side by side. Yet, somewhere in the void beyond known space, the void-born dominion stirred. The destruction of the star-core siphon had not ended their hunger. Far from it, dark shapes gathered, whispering silently in the dark, preparing for their next strike. Daniel did not know it yet, but the real test of courage, loyalty, and unity was still to come. For now, he allowed himself a rare moment of quiet. He had faced death before, but he had never faced a future so uncertain and yet so full of possibilities, and he knew that whatever came next, he would not face it alone.